Hi, welcome to Quintessential Experiences. Today we have Lauren from California joining us. And with everything that's going on in our world today, we actually don't know what our topic is. But Lauren's going to help us figure out what it is. Lauren,
We're just
welcome.
going to go with the flow.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Welcome.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi. Pleasure to be here. And yeah, there's a lot going on in the world. And I think the layers of life and the living in transition is amplified more than I've ever felt before. And being joined with the depth of company on this call today, I think that we can all agree we are seeing it, feeling it, and really navigating it. And sometimes the water gets murky mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I am blown away by all of the sleepwalking that's happening around us. And I really just want to shake people and wake them up. But I also know that we aren't necessarily the alarm clock. So I really, that's what I've been struggling with. I think, well, I don't know, struggling with, but I've been more aware of, I can't wake people up. And I
Exactly.
don't know if it's a conscious choice or people just don't have the awareness that I know that you three can relate to. Like people are very much so looking at the world through a kaleidoscope, many different ways to look at the world, whether it's news, social media, movies, music, whatever, but they're looking at it so shallow. And I think, like back to the beginning of what I was saying, right now, the depth can be felt by me personally more than ever before. And it blows my mind that people are really more surface and shallow and self-absorbed than ever before. Whereas I'm like the opposite. Like, I don't even want to build relationships with people right now for them to just, like I said, they're helium balloons. Just let go.
What I've found, though, is on the flip side of that, that once in a very seldom occasion that you do connect with somebody, it seems to be a stronger connection.
Yes, it's a very strong connection, but I feel them almost being tugged away from what they know. Like they're trying to put their head in the sand. I feel that if it's not a super aware person, like people are about to wake up and then they're like, I'm going to hit the snooze. About to wake
But
up and then they hit the snooze.
in times of great trauma, like in the First World War and the Second World War, Korean War, any sort of great event in life, you find that all human nature is fractious. It fractures, and it takes something else to draw them back together. And I think this is what's happening now. It's not, all right. It's not a war, but it is a war. It's a war against a virus that's killed more people than I think the Second World War altogether. So it's the same sort of feeling. People don't want to get too close to anybody because they might die. That sort of feeling. And then the stuff, that sort of self-preservation. I've got to look after me. I'm me, myself, and I. And that's what I found. More people are totally selfish and self-absorbed.
Yes.
That they don't care about anyone else. And as Mark says, you tend to cleave to the people that you do love, that you do understand, you do know. And I think that's what's happening now. I think it will eventually iron itself out, but God knows what will happen to bring us all back together. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I find the
Yeah.
irony of social media of people wanting to be seen and then not wanting to be seen all at the same time. That's the part I just don't get.
These people are starving for
Mhm.
connection, but
They are.
meanwhile they're just putting out there it's not attention they want, it's connection they want, and they are losing the ability to connect
Hmm.
with the more attention they get. It's just this interaction has just been decimated to the point of not even meaningful. It's almost insulting for someone who values relationships like
Do you
I
feel
do.
do you feel people are just barking up the only tree that is put in front of their face?
Every tree that's put in front of their face.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like there's information and images and people and options are just at our fingertips at all times. And people can't handle that.
It's
They
too
think
much
they can.
choice.
It's too much.
Too much
And
choice.
so,
Are
you know,
people are people asleep because they're disintegrating?
I'm sure that has a whole lot to do with it. And when you think about programming, there's certain programs being run on all of these, movies, music, media outlet, and that's just a very huge impact on neurology. So I think the neurology, brain binary, if you will, the switches there are being flipped on some level. And needless to say, that affects the mental, obviously the mental, the emotional and the spiritual side of it. So it almost probably creates a divide between the biological, neurological, and the spirit and the soul itself. And then all of a sudden, they are just a meat machine walking around, disconnected with the fact that separates them from the fact that they're just a biomachinery, which is the soul, and they're just not even connected to it. So absolutely, I think it creates some sort of disconnect first within themselves. So it affects the relationship with themselves. And now they're not even certain with all these options. Who am I? What am I? Identity crisis. There's a huge identity crisis going on too. And so bringing it back to spiritual, supernatural phenomena and everything like this, people don't even believe in it anymore. It's so much more challenging to have a conversation beyond the physical world than I found it before. But like you said, Mark, when you meet someone and it's there and you can have that conversation, and it's just fewer and farther in between.
Yeah, I have a toss-up one. I'm not sure which one I prefer. I'm not sure if I prefer the world where you sort of connect with a lot more people, and then it's only when you go to the end of the sort of journey with them you realize, we're not that much alike. Or is it the world where you struggle to find anybody you connect with, but whenever you do, it's like, whoa, you're one of mine.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
It's a nice feeling. Maybe is it supposed to be that way? Is it something about our own expectations about what we're feeling it should be this way rather than another way?
Well, I think your outlook, what you give out, you get back, and I think this is what people are not doing. Everybody has their own view of themselves. It's like you're saying about Facebook and the pictures they put on. They might take 20 pictures of themselves, but they'll pick out the best one that they think is the one. I'd like to see the other 19, and I'll pick the one that's the real you, not the other way around. Us here tonight, we're not looking for that perfection in anyone. We're looking for what we can see and what we can feel within each other. And that's what people have lost. They've lost that ability to think for themselves, to choose for themselves, I think, definitely.
Is it possible to be whole in yourself while feeling so disconnected to other people? Isolated? Absolutely.
Yeah. The thing is it's not egotistical. It's knowing who you are. There's been times when I've been totally on my own thoughts, my own feelings, not seeing anybody like me, not conversing with anybody like me. And it's keeping that individuality, keeping that trust and belief in what you believe in and keeping that above everything else. That's what keeps you sane, if you like.
But the pandemic and just being in quarantine was, everyone says it was so bad. And I'm like, I don't know. I really enjoyed myself.
Did you?
Like time with myself, like just kind of doing what I was doing. And, like no matter how many people we meet in the world, we still have to be our favorite, but not in an egotistical way, in a knowing yourself way, in a having a strong bond with self. Right. And then you bring yourself to every situation and you contribute, you add value to the people and the situations that you're a part of. And I
guess it's all in your perspective. It's not a waste of time if you learn something.
No, exactly.
Right. And it never is. And that's what everyone teaches you something, and we're all teachers and we're all students. And it's just very interesting to me. Like, I don't think I could fake it. I really don't think I could. I couldn't. I'm just.
No, you couldn't.
I can't. Yeah, you're right. I cannot fake it. Like, this is me, take it or leave it. And if you leave it, guess what? You made room for more of what's supposed to be around you and me.
Mhm.
So do us all a favor and just come correct and stick around or don't. But that whole, like, you know, the text message, you know, like a text message once a month. Hey, how you been, dude? Don't even.
Don't bother.
Don't bother.
You know, from an Akashic perspective, I'm going to ask you an Akashic kind of question. Obviously, the nature of California, just as you described, being very transactional, and I know Mark can speak to this as well, and probably Marion as well, having been involved in the media world and the industry. Do you feel that maybe you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and to be surrounded by those who are perceived to be asleep, unconscious, fractured, fragmented? And if that is the case, what do you get out of it? What's the big learning? What's the big message and the big why for you?
So, funny story. I don't think I've told you this story. So I live close to the coast, and there's always the salt air creating, you know, corrosion and everything. And so my car battery, I needed to replace it. It had corrosion on the terminals. Right. I went hiking with a friend, came back to my car wouldn't start. I knew it was the corrosion. I just needed a jump, right? So I was on a very busy street, and I was also like less than a mile from my house and everyone I know. So I could have called anyone, but I was on a very busy street. So I popped my hood, stood out there with my jumper cables, and easily 350 people drove by within an hour's time. And it was almost like they were just swiping right. They were driving by, like looking at me like this. You know, like no one stopped, and it just became common. Oh, I didn't tell you the beginning of the story. So the beginning of the story, no one was around, just cars parked on the street, but there was a guy that was getting into his van. So my hood's popped. I have my jumper cables, and I start walking towards him with my jumper cables. And right when I got right on top, you know, close enough to talk to him, he says, "Those aren't mine." I said, "Yeah, I know, they're mine."
They're mine.
But it's the most strange thing that someone can say to you. I could see, like, I don't have time to help you, or, you know, my car's starting fine, but those aren't mine. Like, I found them and I was going to ask him. Like, the strangest reaction, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know, they're mine. Do you think you could jump my car? I know what's wrong with it. I just need a quick jump. This man comes back with, well, I don't know if my battery has enough juice to even start my car. I'm like, that's not how it works, but okay. Clearly you're not in a position to support me in this situation. And I just found it comical. So then I went back, like I said, and I'm standing there, 350 people drive by swiping right on my situation. And the guy who actually stopped was a tow truck driver. So it was his job to see vehicular distress. And he parked his car. He comes, or his tow truck, he comes out, walks across the street to me, and he said, "So what's up? You need a jump?" I'm like, "Yep, need a jump." And he was like, "Well, normally I charge $120 for this." I was like, "Okay, so you're going to charge me $120 for this? Because I live less than a mile away. You can keep driving." And he was like, "No, I'll do it for free." And I was like, "Really?
Oh, yeah, nothing's free."
Yeah, exactly. We're in Southern California. Yeah. He was like, "Yelp review," and gave me his card. And I was like, these people, like, it's just always something for, you know. So anyway, he jumps me, and I'm on the road, you know, driving back home. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. I have jumped 3 people within the last month with my car. And it was just because they needed it. And this is ridiculous. Like, why should I be helpful? Why should I support people? No one supports me. And then I was like, stop it, Lauren. You stop it. That's exactly why you're here, because you are not like them. And you do need to make waves of kindness and love the people, even at the most superficial level that they are able to accept. And one of those people that I jumped prior to my little need for a jump, it was the weirdest thing. Jumped her car. She got in her car. She did not say 2 words to me.
She just drove away.
Just drove away. There was no thank you. There was no nothing. And I just thought, how could you be that disconnected from humanity and from someone who just supported your situation? Like, it blows my mind. And And I really do think it's like this digital disconnect. It's like it has to be. So your question, back to your question, was do you think you're exactly where you're supposed to be? Absolutely, I am. Like I said, you have to meet people where they are, and you have to respect their model of the world, and you can't take on the meaning that could be made out of the way people are operating within their meat machines.
So do you think, Lauren, that we are making a difference then in just keeping our faith, keeping the faith, being us? Do you think we are making a difference at all to these multitude of nobodies, really? I don't see people who've got no manners, they've got no qualities at all. They're just totally egotistical. What do you think we're doing to make a difference?
We're pissing them off.
Yes. And you have to have.
I'd give you some
like, no, there's truth to that. You're pissing them off. And it's almost like some people, the more you love them, the more they hate you, right? But that's that part of themselves. You're shining light on the shadow, right? And I never go anywhere without a flashlight. I'm Scorpio, we live in the dark, right? And so it's like, that's just, I'm not afraid of your darkness. Someone said to me recently, if people knew everything about the people that they interact with, I don't think there'd be that many relationships, friendships,
they wouldn't
or anything.
bother.
I was like, you don't know me very well. I want the good, bad, the ugly, and the in-between. I want to know people. And so when someone hates the love you're giving them, and they get pissed off when you try to give, enlighten, shine light, be for someone, and they're not used to it, might piss them off, but they're noticing. Otherwise, they won't be pissed off.
Maybe they're awakening. Maybe they're awakening, and like anybody else at the butt crack of dawn, they'd rather just stay asleep. Do you find that the more awake one becomes, the more attuned to responsibility they become? And could this be one of the reasons why a number of folks just don't want to shine a brighter light? They don't want to know more. They don't want to have to take on more responsibility for their own actions. Anything? I do. I think there's a huge lack in personal responsibility. Everyone has a reason to justify whatever they're justifying. Yeah. What is it with great, what is that quote? I don't know, power comes, or great knowledge. Great responsibility.
Great responsibility, yeah.
But I kind of have this thought that if you see it, it's your job to handle it. And like, if everyone is not taking responsibility personally, then it falls on someone else's shoulders. Like, I don't eat McDonald's, but if I see your McDonald's cup and bag, I'm going to pick it up. And so it becomes the responsibility of someone else. It's not my job, attitude is just terrible, because we're all here to contribute something.
We have Marion with us today. Your first visit with us was just with Mark and I, because we're talking about all of this, the process of awakening, or the process of being awakened, with Marion here. Would you take us back to the story of when you met the old man who said he knew you?
This guy. So I was driving some remote area in a beautiful island, and I pulled over the car, beautiful views, and I kind of walked up to this bench overlooking, beautiful harbor, boats docked and everything, and this little old man comes walking up. I mean, he could have been 100. Like, he was a little old man. And he sat beside me, and he said, "I've been waiting for you." And I was like, no, you haven't. He said, "I know you." I said, "You don't know me." And first of all, I should say I didn't know anyone on this island. It was just one of those trips where I threw a dart at the map and ended up buying the plane ticket where I was. And so he sat beside me, and, naturally I kind of reclused a little bit to the left, and he proceeded to tell me in detail events of my life that he would not have known if he did not know me. And then he said, after all that, I didn't say anything the whole time. I mean, it was probably 5-10 minutes that he went on about things that he could not have known. So it wasn't a very long amount of time, but it was very substantial what he had to say and very impactful. And I'm like, okay, who told you and who are you? And the last thing he said to me, and I wish I would have written this stuff down after it happened, but you know how we are, time goes by. But he said to me, from there, after he told me so much about my life, he said to me something to the effect of, you are here for a lot more than you can see. And he went on to just basically say, you're on the right path. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And you've got a big job to do. I mean, ultimately is what he said, but I forget the words he said. And he had broken English a little bit, but ultimately that was the essence.
The man on the bench you met prior to arriving in California?
Years prior. That was in 2009. I moved here in 2012.
You told me a story about going on a road trip and something happened when you pulled over.
I think that was one of those moments in life that says, hey, you're lost, get back on track. I pulled over and I walked up to this bench, beautiful view. I enjoyed the view. And this little old man came walking up and he said, I've been waiting for you. And I didn't really respond to him because I'm like, okay, crazy man. And then he sat down beside me and he said, it took you a while to get here, but I know you. And that's when I said, no, you don't. You don't know me. And honestly, do we ever really know ourselves? I suppose. I mean, we get to know ourselves our whole life because we're always evolving, right? But he just proceeded to tell me things about myself that no one would have known except me. So I think on a broader spectrum, we are all connected to one another. And I suppose we have the ability to tap into one another, but we have so many protective mechanisms in place that we are not open to that. And every now and then someone comes along and is able to disarm us unbeknownst to us.
Anjali, can you scan the old man? I'm getting an alert on this old man.
Okay. Okay, I'm getting a soul signature. So this is a real human being, alive and incarnate at that time in 2009. Okay. Please confirm, was this an apparition via another dimension? No. So it was a real human being. And let's see. Was he also a visitor or a traveler to that park bench location? Yes. Was he from that vicinity? No. Was he from that continent? No. Was he from this planet? Am I looking at a parallel? A parallel soul? Am I looking at a mission realm? I am looking at a parallel soul. Okay, so what you experienced in this old man was a real, physical, third-dimensional, flesh and blood human being, but was not from this timeline or this planet. He was just there for you.
So the key to all this is that man. Like, what did he say to you? That this is the only thing I read in the brief was about this experience. So this is why we're all here. Is that run-in with that man?
Yes.
So what was it about that stuck in your head? Like the thing that he said to you that nobody else knows about. Right,
and you cried after he spoke with you.
Well, he just knew things that no one else knew. Nothing that, I mean, he couldn't have known it. Maybe not that no one else knew, because maybe I'd shared it at some point, but he couldn't have known it. So for someone to show up out of nowhere and tell you things about yourself is a very interesting encounter, you know? And it was just not like, hey, no one knows this, but it was like my story he knew. And that was interesting. Just major events that happened in my life. No one knew me. I was a traveler. I was just a random person there by myself in some islands that I'd never been to. No one knew me there. But yet he showed up and knew where I had been.
From his parallel perspective, or world, if you will, the parallel you was known to him and observed under his watch there as well. How many worlds was this old man watching Lauren simultaneously? I'm getting six different parallel timelines from which your seed position of doubt, lack of feeling settled, uncertainty and doubt of where to go, these 6 lifetimes hold that same point, relatively speaking, in common. So I sense that the kind of work that he was doing was helping you in that world and in all the other parallel ones in the same way, for the same reason, under different conditions. Because this time you were traveling, another time you may have been in a different location under a different set of circumstances. But it's the conditions. It's the conditions that you were in that forms a nodal point, if you will. So when we consider things like branch timelines, and if you try to do any form of future casting, this would be considered like a nodal point from which an action takes place, an event takes place. And that is what determines what will go. So if you could imagine, let's say, up to 6 different possibilities of outcome from this set of conditions being met, that he was able to interact with you in a way that you could be present to him and receive what he had to tell you. Where you go from there doesn't necessarily have to be the same in all 6 going forwards.
So are those 6 timelines, I mean, yeah, everything. So of course, you know, it gets very convoluted when you start thinking about multi-dimensions, right?
Yes.
So I recently read something that someone said you could step into other timelines at any time. I don't know exactly what that means.
I'm not
So
sure any of us really do, but some of us have experienced it. Mark,
yeah.
I defer to you.
I mean, it's very interesting when you start talking about this quantum stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it super interesting, drawn to it even. I mean, and even though it's hard to wrap your head around, and it's kind of in theory, without proof, yet I still think at my core, I feel is more real than anything I can grab onto in this world. And I think that's where my struggle with the physical reality is, because I feel more connected to the spiritual side of it. I look around and I'm like, really, money, stock market, movies, really? This is what we're going to focus on? It just doesn't go all the way through. And so I think that's been my challenge with the physical reality for a long time is that.
Mark, is it possible? Is it possible to step into our different timelines? Are we doing it automatically every day anyhow?
Being possible is one thing, but controlling when it happens is another. You know, I end up all sorts of places, mostly against my will.
Really?
I don't know how to do any of that stuff. Like even Marion, she'll tell you sometimes she wakes up and sees me standing in the room, you know, in the middle of the night. I've
like
never even been to her house.
It could be astral projection, or something. We don't know.
Yeah. I have no idea where she lives. I've never been to her house. consciously. But she says, just as I'm flesh and blood, I would be standing right there. There's been there's so many fascinating things, even in the same timeline. I was in Seattle in the 90s at a restaurant that I used to go to. 2 years later, I'm in Ireland in a band with this girl who says, oh, I was in Seattle a couple of years ago, brings her photographs to show me, and I'm in the background of one of her photos at the same restaurant. 7 billion people on the planet. Sometimes these things happen, and it's just so out there. The chances.
There aren't.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's 100% if it happens, but yet it's almost so strange you can't wrap your mind around it.
And it always happens in Ireland too, a lot of times. I was in New York. One time I was in New York at an airport, and I bought a bottle of Black Bush, which is Irish whiskey.
Yes,
and I had like a 10-hour. I had like a 10-hour layover in this airport, so I was sitting and I was sneaking drinks of this Black Bush whenever nobody was looking. This old man slides up next to me, and I swear he looked like a homeless guy. Honestly, he looked like a homeless guy
in an airport.
I felt sorry for him, so me and him, we finished this bottle.
Good.
And we went our separate ways. A year later, I was in Ireland, walking down the road, and I bump into this guy. And turns out he's a professor at the university.
Oh, that's funny.
That is remarkable. Oh my
God. I don't know.
And
he remembered. He said, oh, you're the whiskey guy.
You're the whiskey guy.
The whiskey guy. He remembered you.
He remembered you. Well, you're not going to forget that.
Yeah.
He says, do you have any more?
A year later.
That's brilliant.
It turns out he was this famous anthropologist or something. I thought he was a homeless guy.
That's brilliant.
That's funny.
Oh my God.
So, I have no idea what the possibilities are, but I know that the possibilities are endless.
Do you think you're waiting for that next crossroads?
What's that?
What you're waiting?
The next crossroads.
Do you think you're waiting for that next person, that next crossroads, somebody else to send you on a different direction?
I don't think she needs anybody.
Well,
I want to ask you, this gentleman that came up and said, I've been waiting for you, do you think he was mortal, or do you think he could have been a spirit?
I mean, perhaps a bit of both, because I suppose we're vessels, right? So at any point, a normal person can be speaking divinely with some sort of inspiration. So I don't think that he was like apparition. I do think that he could have been some sort of voice of a vessel. I do think that's a possibility. Or it could be very clairvoyant, and he just, waits for strange travelers to come through, and then he just rocks the world. I mean, that could be it as well. Yeah. Exactly.
No, I just think it's amazing, that it's happened to me. I've had, but only in spirit. I've had spirit say to me, we've been waiting for you, and probably been waiting 100 years for me, so where I go into places and there's been no one there. But each and every time something like this happens to you, Lauren, it must make you want to prove that they were correct, that this is what you're supposed to do. And that's why you've become so poignant, so direct in your views in life.
Yeah, so it really did put my life in a different trajectory, that trip and that specific moment on that trip, because I realized it's not about me, and it's not about the individuals that are close to me. It's about everybody. And if you look from way up here down on the world below, and again, I don't mean I'm looking down on the world. I mean, I'm one of those little ants down there walking around, trying to figure out which direction to go. We're all just trying to figure it out. And we all have pieces to the puzzle that the other people are putting together.
Yes.
And if I'm just sitting here trying to create contentment in a life that feels fabricated for the contentment of the people around me, then I'm really not serving my purpose to my full capacity. And I was not operating optimally at that time of my life. And I knew it.
If you were to meet that old man today, let's say, and he wants to know what you have to say, what would you say to him?
I really don't know how to answer that, because he told me more than I could ever had follow-up questions for. And he didn't even say all that much, you know? And I mean, he did, but he didn't, you know, like,
Yeah.
it wasn't, like I said, he painted the past, but he didn't really paint the future, nor did he, anyway, I don't know what I would say to him.
If you had
I
to just
think,
leave
I
him a
don't know.
message.
I mean, I probably recognize him.
Yep. What if you just had to leave him a message? What would your message say?
Yeah, you told me so. You told me so. I think it would have to be lighthearted, because his overall energy was very, very much so silly. It wasn't serious. It was silly. It was soft. It was sweet. It was very much so, I told you so. Am I right or am I wrong? I thank him for even taking the time to make the choice to sit beside me and speak to me. I mean, goodness, the guy, like I said, I mean, age is a condition more than it is a number in my mind. The guy had the spirit of a child, yet it took him a lot to walk to where I was. He wasn't moving like a child. He was moving like 100-year-old man.
Right.
And he could have easily have chosen to say, yeah, there she is. I've been waiting for her. Let me say a prayer from over here. He came from the outside in and the inside out. And that's where the impact met the middle. It's the spiritual impact. It's the waves that we are to make and to help, shine the light. We are here for more than ourselves. So I think that's why the self-absorption of the world around right now at an all-time, idolatry of self really rubs my fur so wrong, because we're not here for ourselves. And if we're only looking at ourselves, we're limited, very, very limited. That it was just very subtle. You're on the right track. Trust who you are, where you're going, be where you are now. The most important step is now, and just one foot in front of the other. And I see you. And he just kind of like very casually got up and walked away.